What do IN types have in common? I'm going to talk about why IN types are the philosophers, and there are two types of philosophers. You have the INT Theorist and the INF Idealist, and you're like, say what? This guy is putting together types that don't belong together because they don't share cognitive functions. But I have a reason for doing so, and I'm going to show you in what way they actually do share cognitive functions. And so bear with me. So I wrote a couple articles that go in depth about the matter, and they're down below, but I'm going to talk about them here in this video as well. So we can look at the commonalities of INFPs, INTPs, and INTJs, and INFJs superficially, but I'm going to really deep dive into this. And according to the MBTI, INFPs and INFJs, they don't share functions. INTPs and INTJs, they don't share functions. This is correct in the sense that they don't share valued functions. By valued, I mean functions that are favored. So, as we know, for instance, INFPs, they value FI, NE, SIT. INFJs, they value NI, FE, TISC. Two very different set of functions. So socionics, it agrees that types that share first three letters and not the last letter, they agree with MBTI that they don't share valued functions. But what socionics adds to the type theory is that it ranks the functions based on the strength of the function, not just the value of the function. Now I'll let you know what the difference is. And I kind of spoken about this before. But okay, so here's an analogy. So someone could be very good at computer programming. I got really tired of my piano example, but this is not any better of an example. But someone could be very good at computer programming, but it does not mean that they like doing computer programming. In other words, they don't value doing it. Perhaps this person likes to do artwork instead. So INFPs and INTPs, they don't value NI, but they're actually very strong at NI. So this is the analogy here. And this is what unites the IN types together. A very strong and powerful NI. Yes, all this time you spent explaining that IN does not mean introvert intuition. You've been explaining that to people, but actually INPs, that is INFPs and INTPs, they're not introvert intuitives in the sense that they're not types that value that function, but they are in the sense that they are introvert intuitives in the sense that they do they are very strong at the function. So IN types are also united by a very weak extrovert sensing, which makes sense. Both MBTI and socionics, they're not very good at extrovert sensing. As you know, INTJs, INFJs are very weak at SC. And I mentioned in previous videos that INFPs and INTPs are not only very weak at SC, but they also undervalue it, thus they're called SC polar. So in the first article I wrote below, I showed how this plays out. And yes, it does follow how it plays out that IN types are philosophers and with strong NI and very weak SC. And yes, it does follow that ES types, whether they are ESTJs, ESFJs, or ESFPs, ESTPs, have very strong SC. IS types have very strong SI, and EN types have very strong NE. So in future videos, I'll show how this is the case. ES types are thus doers who are proactive. IS types are crafters who are skillful. EN types are visionaries who are expansive. And IN types are philosophers who are contemplative or reflective. INFPs and INTPs actually quite regularly test high on introvert intuition. If you look at Dario Nari's test or whatever cognitive function tests there are, yet when you speak with them, they certainly consciously value NE over NI. So the NI in INFPs and INTPs may even be more out of whack in intensity compared to the INJs. For not only is it unconscious in these two types, Ni is an unconscious function, which they also do not value SC. So INFJs, INTJs, very weak at SC, but they value SC. SC nicely counterbalances Ni, provides it with a context. INFPs, INTPs, very weak at SC, not value SC. Thus, they have very strong Ni. Thus, it's kind of out of whack because it's not counterbalanced by the SC. This is called SC polar. It could result in extreme lack of understanding of physical reality, or kind of avoidance of like trusting their five senses of awareness, and getting sucked deeper into inner world of abstract reality. They don't want to just go out into the world where there's that hustle and bustle going on. So I think things like that, they're totally against any aggression, or they just misperceive things as being aggression. Thus, and not only that, they get sucked into this Ni world of this very abstract reality. So these two types are not very, maybe the worst at any form of street smarts, INFP and INTP. Thus, they may seem like they're unable to make it in the real world. So INFJs and INTJs may kind of appear better in this regards in some respects. In the second article I wrote about how INTs, INTJs, and INFPs are theorist philosophers, and INFs are idealist philosophers. So for INTs, strength in the development of theory comes from the fact that INTs are very strong at both TI and NI. So, other N types would claim to be good at theory, but what it means is being able to construct theory in a very precise and logical, intricate, structured kind of way, which almost appears like a crystalline form existing in a head of intellectual constructs. And this comes from TI. Yes, TI applies to INTJs as well, even though they don't value TI. If you really think about INTJs and you step back and look at them and ignore their TE, there is a very clear inward structure in your mind that's like super crystalline and elaborate, and in fact probably even more intensive than the INTPs because of the same reason as I mentioned about the NI and the INPs. It's not counterbalanced. So there's this a very strong unconscious TI in the INTJs that keeps running and running and running, creating this very powerful crystalline form in their head, even more so than INTPs in certain regards. But they don't value it, and you can see how they try to get out of their TI, which is very strong, and get into their TE, which is strong, but not as strong as their TI. So you can see the strive to get away from this TI-ness and going into TE to implement their ideas, avoiding the these super structured forms. So INTJs will constantly try to circumvent TI with TE. So if you compare ENTJs and ESTJs with INTJs, INTJs actually have more patience with TI. They truly operate it in a very powerful way, whereas you don't really see that in ENTJs and ESTJs. So basically this like really neat like crystalline kind of form of TI. So yeah, where am I? Okay, this will be the same with INTPs in regards to NI, as I mentioned, and I wrote. So there's the third article below about how INFPs and INTPs express NI in the unconscious id. So the INF are idealist philosophers who are very strong at NI and FI. Idealist philosophers create worldviews with NI that reflect their own personal convictions and sentiments about how things should be. So when I noticed INFJs speak, I could hear a lot of Ni, and then Fi, Ni, Fi, Ni, Fi. Yes, Fi. I'm not getting that wrong. But so they foresee and play around with abstract ideas with Ni, but they show a lot of strong personal conviction counter to social expectation. It's coming from a very intrinsic kind of source. They actually have strong inward sensitivity. So you could tell that this strong sense of personal conviction really hits them hard. So however, whenever they get into the Fi modes, they go from Ni to Fi, Ni to Fi. When they get into the Fi mode, you always notice that they recover by turning over to Fe. So the patterns like Ni, Fi, Ni, Fi, and then the Fi goes over to Fe. So they recover from the Fi phase by going to harmonizing with Fe, because they rather harmonize with others with their Fe, even though they actually inwardly have a strong sense of their own individuality, which comes from Fi. There's this need to harmonize and get into Fe. So actually, I asked INFJs who did not know about the MBTI cognitive function thing about whether they are really aware of their personal emotions, and I think it is the case, and it is also the case they get lost in others' emotions as well. But the reason why they could be aware is because of their Fi, and why they get lost is because of Fe. So there's a little bit of a tug of war there, I think. So you notice that INFJs try to lighten their Fi evaluations, turning it into a sort of joke. And this is how Fi behaves in the demonstrative.